and welcome to the Pink Sheep Tales podcast. Pink Sheep Tales? What's this all about, I hear you ask? Well, the name is based on the old saying, black sheep of the family, and tales, T-A-L-E-S, is a play on words because we'll be hearing people's life stories. So through this podcast, I'm so excited to be able to share these remarkable stories from inspirational children and adults with you. These everyday people are building amazing businesses, excelling in their careers, exceptional in their industries, choosing unique career paths, and all in the name of living their best life. My goal is to encourage listeners to follow their passions and be inspired by our pink sheep who have and are doing just that. So let's do it. Let's open the gate and hear this week's Pink Sheep Tale. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Pink Sheep Tales. I'm really excited to have my special guest with me today. I've known her all her life, and she's just a fantastic person, and I've wanted to let everyone know her story because she is one unique lady. She used to be a jockey. So going with our theme of women in male-dominated industries, well, this is, taking it to the nth degree, which she was definitely a minority in a majority of a male-dominated industry there. So I'll introduce her now. So Sammy, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Your story really interests me because you were a female jockey and it's just such a male-dominated industry, and I think everyone would be really interested to hear your story and where you are now, how you became a jockey. So would you like to just give us a little overview of your life and where you are at the moment?
Sure. So at the moment I'm currently 45 and I'm working in the area of families relating to domestic violence of male victims instead of female victims, which is quite rare. Well, it actually isn't rare, but it's unique, should I say, and it's great that the issues are finally being addressed because, there is a real crisis with this sort of work. I've been doing this for 4 years. I was working as a jockey from when I left school at 15 years old until I think I retired in about 98. So I was in the racing industry for around 10 years as a strapper and then a jockey for my apprenticeship, and then followed through with around 3 years following that as a qualified senior jockey.
Oh, excellent. So,
yeah.
What I like to do is go back and we sort of see if we think about younger Sam, like what you were like at school, what your interests were. Could you see yourself becoming a jockey? Like 15, you were in school when you started that. So was it something that was a passion for your entire life?
Look, it wasn't a passion for my entire life. I guess the younger Sam, was interested in most animals and horses, obviously, like most young girls. Everybody wants a pony, I guess. And when my parents separated when I was only 7 years old, and my father's second wife was into horses, however, they were show horses. And so I got tied up in doing a little bit of show work, I guess, when I was around, 9, 10, 11 or somewhere there. And then fell in love with the animal because they're magnificent. So I went into show riding, etc. And then we had a video shot with my mum and my stepfather, and an old fellow used to come in there by the name of Jack, and he was saying, you should be a jockey, you love horses. And anyway, there was an apprenticeship going out at a local stable out at Wilberforce, outskirts of Sydney.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another, and I was all of about 38 kilos wringing wet, and I went out and applied for the position and got it, which was obviously as a stable hand to start with, and couldn't even push a broom, so it was pretty difficult at the time. Yeah, so, and that's where my passion and love for, the beautiful racehorse began.
Ah, so did you literally just go to the stable and say, I'd like to apply for the apprenticeship? Was there anything that they were looking for?
Well, obviously somebody that's tiny. Obviously somebody that is going to be a jockey needs to be small in stature. So obviously I wasn't very strong at the time, and there was a few difficulties in pushing wheelbarrows, etc. But I started off there. I did some work. I'd already actually been there to do some work in the school holidays and for a work experience as I was in Year 10 at the time. And then I applied for that position, and obviously it wasn't straight into it as an apprentice jockey, and I worked there for a few years before the opening opened up for that. Yeah, I just did stables and worked with the horses, yeah.
So at that age, at the young age of 15, getting into it, was it something you were aware of, that there weren't many women doing this?
I didn't actually know too much about race horses, to be honest, and when I reflect back to some of the things, I really had no idea. You know, I didn't come from a family of racing, and, I remember some relatives that would have a bet on the weekend, and I'd hear the transistor radio going, and I knew some relatives that were into trotting, but not actually the racehorse gallopers. So I didn't actually know too much about it. I just had a passion to ride horses at that stage, and the thought of going too fast, etc., was quite terrifying. And obviously they're massive animals and they're so powerful. But I started there just working on the weekends, and then, like I said, I applied for the full-time position. So I was 15 when I left school, and in that January, still at 15 years old, I started full-time 6 days a week in the stables.
What would a typical day be like for you?
I'm not sure how it is now, but I know it's changed a lot. But when I was an apprentice, it was pretty tough days. We'd start at 5, we'd finish at 10, we'd go home. It was a split shift. So obviously in the morning we'd start off, feeding horses and mucking out their stables, and then take a load into Hawkesbury Racecourse where fast work would be done, which would be, the pace work, 3/4 pace and galloping. Mm-hmm. And then you'd bring them back home to the stables, feed them, water them and all that sort of thing. And then you would have a break through the middle of the day, and then you'd come back to the stables in the afternoon around 3 o'clock. And again, do the stables, take them for a walk, put them out in yards for a run, stretch their legs, do all their feet and groom them, etc., and then feed them up again. Yeah, so it was a big day. And then obviously if we had horses going to the races, that could also, we'd leave at 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock even to take them to the races, depending on how far we had to travel. So it could be anywhere from 5 a.m. start or, 4 a.m. start to 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night if you're travelling out west or, a long way to the races. So they were big days, and it was very tiring work.
Yeah. How many other people were your age?
There's actually, there's quite a few that are your age. A lot of the people are drawn to, the power and the, therapeutic option of racing as well, because, there's a family within racing. And so a lot of people that probably come from, I guess, I don't like the word, but dysfunctional backgrounds, or people that, are lacking something in their personal life, are drawn to racing because there's a real family nature to it. So there's a lot of people, I think that back in my day, if you couldn't get a job or, you weren't educated, that, it was a good option. And, people are passionate about the horses and the racing, so it was a great option too. Yeah.
Well, that sort of leads, if we could skip a few years, and because that's a good segue to the business you've created, the consultancy business you've created. So this might be a good time to explain what business you have started.
Sure. So I guess over the time, I retired from racing, and like I just suggested, I didn't actually have any background leaving school at 15. Early days at school, I wanted to be a vet, but then obviously I realised that you have to work really hard to do that, and I didn't want to work hard because I wasn't a fan of school. So in the end, I just did lots of other jobs. I worked in childcare and did any sort of work that I could get by with a limited education. So then I came across a counsellor myself because I needed some direction. His name is Chris Bauer, and he's a GP, obstetrician turned family therapist. And we were trying to network to find out where my passion lied. And so he suggested that I get into community services because, I'm passionate about the helping industry. Yeah. And, I really wanted to help people. I didn't know in what context at that time. Everything still kept leading me back to racing because I am passionate about it. And but at the time, I thought I would do something broad. So I did a dual diploma in community services and case management. Mm-hmm. From there, I started seeing where I wanted to go. So then I went on to university and did a degree in social science, social welfare, which led me to the work that I do now in domestic violence, and which, I'm passionate about, and I'm passionate about family therapy because I think that it's an important thing, relationships. However, I still wasn't quite happy with that, so I went on to do a postgraduate degree in counselling because I really love the face-to-face work, and I think that it's important to support people to support themselves. So, a counsellor works to help people make informed decisions. So I was really passionate about that. So I just graduated in December and have created a business called Racing Industry Consultancy, Samantha Gordon Counselling. So the business that I'd like to go into, that I'm creating, is to support jockeys and racing industry participants because I understand, obviously, firsthand the challenges that go within the industry. And, as I said, I was a jockey for 10 years, so I think I have a pretty good understanding of a lot of those challenges. And then now with my 7 years of university to get my 2 degrees, we studied a lot of psychology and counselling and, relationship issues, and obviously the challenges that go with the racing industry and disposable income, and, there's a whole list of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, congratulations on graduating last year.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, I bet that's a long journey, 7 years.
Yeah, it was. It was difficult. And, I've got a son that's 15. I think he's pretty happy that there's no more studies for me. So,
yeah. Oh, I bet. It's full-time. Yeah. And so you were you doing full-time or part-time study?
So I was actually doing part-time study. So I was doing my postgraduate degree, I did them actually both online. My postgraduate degree obviously had components of face-to-face with that, obviously, to get the experience. So I did that through the University of New England at Armidale. So we had to go on campus and do face-to-face interviewing and counselling skills and, videos and whatnot with lectures, etc. So it was most of it was online with the other components. So it was great.
Oh, that's fantastic. So if we flip back now to what led us to that conversation then, so you were you started your apprenticeship when you were 15, and you were within the industry for 10 years. So did that pretty much, was that your whole? Did that take up your whole life, those 10 years? It sounds like it was it's not like a 9-to-5 job. It's consumed your entire life.
Yeah, my entire life. So like I said, we work 6 days a week in the racing industry, and it's really hard, and you manage, they could be I know that other stables do it differently, but we were sort of in the provincial, so it was a little bit different. We didn't have our own horses as such to look after. We looked after the whole team, and so we'd have up to 30 horses in work with weight and door and sling card at Wilberforce. And so, 6 days a week, and, they were big days, and we worked really hard.
Yeah.
It was consuming. So I did that for 10 years until I was 25. And then at 25, no particular fall had caused it, but I had some wear and tear issues with my back, but the race club doctor sort of suggested that weren't going to get any better.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make a decision of what to do at that time. And, for one, it was the only thing that I knew. And for two, I was so passionate about it. I lived it, breathed it. It was, my be all of everything. And, it was a big decision to make. But, obviously your health comes first and you have to do what's the right thing to do at the time.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
How soon after that was your son born?
Oh, he wasn't born for another 7 years after that.
Yeah.
So in that time, I was lucky that a local lady knew of a position going in a daycare centre. So I worked in a daycare centre for 7 years. And in that time, I got married and had my son. I had my son at 30, not 7 years, sorry. So I had my son 5 years later at the age of 30. And at that time, I just took a small amount of time off with him and then went back, obviously, because I worked in the daycare centre. I could take him along, so that worked out well.
Yeah.
And, I did that for another couple of years, yeah.
So have there been any physical struggles as a result of racing or any other health issues that you've overcome that you'd like to share with our audience?
When I had my son, there was a few complications, and I had a medical condition which meant that I had to have an emergency cesarean where some health issues played out that I was lucky to come out of. And then when my son was 9 months old to the day, actually, which was just around the corner, I suffered a subarachnoid hemorrhage. So I ended up in a coma for 5 days. At that time, obviously, they did a lot of tests to find out what was happening and whether it was a direct result of any race falls that I had. Because I suffered a bad race fall back in 93 where I had a fractured skull, cracked ribs, cracked pelvis, dislocated collarbone, and, had to have a shoulder reconstruction and things. And so they wondered if the hemorrhage could have been a direct result from that. However, with all the scans and tests, etc., they said that it was just, a bolt from the blue, like a stroke. It can happen to anyone. I was in a coma for 5 days and they gave me a 4% chance of living. So that was a pretty big challenge to overcome as a, new mum.
Yeah.
So that was difficult.
Yeah, that would have been really scary for your family.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're all okay now, though?
Yeah, no, everything's okay now. So, I haven't had tests for a long time, but they said that, I probably got less chance than somebody else because I've had a lot of scans, so they know that there's no, aneurysm or anything like that.
Oh, good.
No, that's all good, so that's great, but, I was very lucky.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, gosh. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's something really personal, and but...
Yeah.
Oh,
I guess the other, challenges that I've overcome, I guess, is going from something that you're extremely passionate about to be told that, you should probably give up riding. And like I stated that, I didn't have any education background leaving school at 15. So it was a real challenge to find a job, full stop, let alone a job that I was so passionate about. So, there's a lot of key factors that when somebody goes into the racing industry and seeks what they're seeking, it's easy for somebody that's drawn into racing, that's, an adrenaline person that gets excited about going 60 kilometres on a horse and, it takes a certain type of person and a genetic makeup to attract that person to become a jockey. So, those same genetic factors later in life can also cause anxiety and depression. So, I did struggle with my own mental health for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, it's always something that you have to maintain. It's not something that goes away because, it is part of your genetic makeup. So that's also what's driven me to be passionate about the helping profession, because I understand if I didn't find somebody that's kind of, I guess what you'd say is, I got it, understood. I don't know where I would be today. Yeah. So, because also with some of those underlying issues comes, anxiety, depression, addiction, whether it be alcohol, drugs, also issues, gambling, and being in an industry like racing where it's primarily there in front of your face. That is something also that can be a challenge for a lot of retired jockeys post-racing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really, from personal experience, and you still socialize within the racing industry and know a lot of jockeys and trainers. And so you can really, it's not like going to another counselor, just an average counselor who you have to explain all the politics and the work and the whole background to racing to start then telling your story. You kind of just know it from the beginning, and you can really just talk to them about what the actual issue is, and they know that you understand because you've been there.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why, I think this is a great opportunity, because I have a niche. I've been in the industry, I've lived experience, and now obviously I have 2 uni degrees that can follow up on what I knew with the statistics of what these issues really are. So, obviously when somebody seeks some counselling, it's a massive, massive step in the first place because of the stigma that's associated with, any sort of mental health or any other illness that isn't a physical sign that people can see. So people struggle with, seeking support in the first place. So I think that what I bring to the table is quite unique because, as you stated, they don't need to explain to me, and it's not something that is easily understandable if you haven't been in the racing industry. So with my previous experience, I think it's great that I don't have to hear that. So, I can deal with then some presenting problems and then look at what's the underlying factors between, for these people and what their issues are.
Yeah.
And like you said, I still have a lot of contacts in the racing industry. I still talk to trainers that were jockeys. Tracy Bartley's a good friend of mine, and, he said that he was happy for me to mention here, there's a lot of other jockeys and jockeys, still older jockeys that are still riding, Anthony Cavallo. A lot of my friends are great people, and, I've also, supported them over the years. And, I think that it's, everybody seems to support the idea because they can see not only with their struggles, but they can see the younger generation coming through and some of the key factors, obviously having disposable cash like jockeys do, and also, young apprentice jockeys, when they come out of their apprenticeship, they're all of a sudden the successful ones are then given this massive lump sum of cash, and if they don't have the correct support, whether it be, financial advisors, counsellors, legal, lots of areas, these guys can just really go down the wrong avenue. Yeah.
And when we were talking last night about today's interview, I sort of threw up the idea that you could expand to help any sort of professional sports person, because that's something that translates across all sport. There's a different, it's not like going to your social footy club and playing social footy. It's different when you're a professional. So you could translate your services to any sport as well.
Yes, that's correct. So, jockeys aren't an isolated profession. And, the thing is, you have a look at any elite sports person, and a lot of them are, after they're in the industry, whilst they're in the industry and then following on, have a lot of issues following that, because they go from this person who is just, this is their be-all and end-all, and then how do they move forward, that transition from being this, especially in the race, like I said, any elite sports person where they're very popular and they're focused on it, everybody's focused on them because of that bit of popularity. So then when they go away from that, and many jockeys, Bill asked us, lots of people that have had race falls, things like that, they then go, well, who am I now? Their money disappears. Nobody wants to know them. And, I could name 10 jockeys straight off the bat that could, could also say the same, that as soon as they stopped riding in races, as soon as the money went, their friends disappeared, which is, such a sad scenario, but it is really, the case. And so any elite sports person could, have some challenges when they retire. And so I think that it's important to see how they can move forward from that once they retire. And I worked with some other people previously in looking at pathways for that retirement or for that redirection of another industry or another how they could also work in the industry in a different capacity, because I think it's important to maintain these relationships with the industry because they're so talented and they know so much about it that the racing industry should keep them in some form, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's fantastic, and it's great that you do have the support of past and present jockeys and people within the industry now that will be able to support and advocate for this service that you want to provide to people. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, we could keep talking about that forever. But
we could.
Yeah. So what's something socially that you love to do? Now that you've finished uni, you've got all this time on your hands.
I do. And that has been an adjustment in itself because, working full-time, I've been working 2 jobs. While I do the domestic violence work, I've also been teaching at TAFE as a teacher for TVET students. So they're the students that are doing, the HSC that do a certificate 2 at the same time. So I've been teaching them community services, which has been great because I think it's really important to empower our younger generation.
Yeah.
So that's been really exciting. So between 2 jobs and staying up until 2 o'clock writing essays, etc., it is an adjustment. So what do I do with my time? Obviously, I've got some racing friends still. So I have a friend down the South Coast. They're racehorse trainers, Terry Robinson, and my friend Monique Miller. She has a horse riding business on Shoalhaven Heads down at the beach, which is fantastic to get away for a ride when I can. Actually, I'm going this weekend.
Yeah.
And
could you say that suburb again?
So down at Shoalhaven Heads.
Shoalhaven. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Shoalhaven Heads. So they've got I think they've got more ponies now than they do racehorses. So they have around 20-odd racehorses, 20-odd horses that they take out on the beach. They do sunrise, sunset, special occasions, and it's fantastic just to get away to reconnect with the horses and get away from the stressful work that I do. So I really enjoy that. I have a couple of crazy Labradors, which I love and enjoy spending time with them. I do some yoga to calm my mind, and I think it's a really good holistic approach to my own wellbeing because obviously that's important when I deal with crisis situations a lot, so it helps reduce stress.
Yeah.
And like I said, I have a 15-year-old son who's very passionate about becoming a pilot, so try and get him out to Bankstown to do some flying on his own. So, yeah, it's great. So it's a very full life.
Yeah, he's also an avid musician.
He sure is.
Yeah, we're going to interview him next time he's available because he's got a busy little schedule with everything he does.
He does. He goes to a performing arts high school and he's super, super talented. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. Well, was there anything that we haven't spoken about that you'd like to add in?
The other thing is obviously, to combine more of a holistic approach because we know about animal therapy with, adults and people with PTSD and, reducing stress and trauma in people, childhood trauma, things like that. I think that, just between my Labradors and also some horse riding, I think that would be really good also because it's so complex, some of the issues that we deal with. I think obviously animal therapy makes anybody happy, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, so, I've got 4 cats. It has to.
Exactly. We know that, the good endorphins come out when we, most people when we come around animals and, there's proven statistics that prove that. So, I think that's a great thing also to combine. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd like to combine that with your consultancy business?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh,
yeah, I think it'd be great.
Oh, brilliant. So a young girl out there thinking she likes her horse, how could she, because that Michele Payne's movie came out last year and that was very popular. So there's probably has given a few little girls some ideas of, I might like to become a jockey. What advice would you give them?
Look, I think it's the racing industry is such a great industry. And like I said, it's a family industry. You know, I think once you're in it, you're hooked, and I think, you know, it's easy for people to say, well, if you're not happy, to move on, but, you know, it's really not that easy, and it is quite addictive. And so, you know, I'd say definitely choose a career path in the racing industry. Obviously find the right career path, because every career path isn't the right one as a young person going into the industry. But, you know, I'm happy to have a chat with anybody that wants to talk about it. So, yeah, I think that would be great.
If anyone was wanting to get in touch with you for counselling services, or just advice on how to become a jockey, or hear more about your story, where could they get in touch with you?
I'm happy to talk to anybody. So if they want to get in contact with me on Facebook at Racing Welfare Consultancy, just drop me an inbox, and I'm happy to give them a call and speak to them.
Oh, fantastic. And we'll add any other links or contact details for yourself to the show notes and to our Facebook page as well with this podcast. So it's just a quick click away to get in touch with Sam. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Sam, for all your time. We've really appreciated it. And it is a really interesting story. The excellent timing, because it comes off the back of Ride Like a Girl. And we're talking about, you know, a male-dominated industry, and it still is male-dominated, but thinking back to when you first started, you know, you were really a pioneer at that time, and just hearing your story of coming out of it and the other challenges you've overcome to be where you are now, it's just fantastic and an inspiration to other people. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you really enjoyed this week's tale. Let me now invite you to pop over to our Facebook group called Pink Sheep Tales Podcast, and there you can stay up to date with all the exciting news from our pink sheep. You can also find myself at OCD, Organising, Cleaning and Decluttering Specialists on Facebook, or on my website ocdpro.com.au. Well, I'll catch you back here next week. Until then, enjoy yourself.